Hey guys, just want to say thanks again for tuning into part two of our holiday episode for 2022. Lots of great more fun and exciting conversations that we have with our other guests for this part. Like I said, it was just a lot to put in together to one, so we couldn't, and we split it up into two. Just how packed it was for this. So sit back again, relax, listen, and again, as I've mentioned before a couple times, please stick around to the end because there's a lot of important information we need to share about the show with you. So thanks for tuning in again and enjoy the show. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Joanna, how are you doing?
Good, good. How are you? It's been such a long time since we last spoke.
I know it has been. So, everybody, this is Joanna Keller, and as some of you may recall, she was on episode 277, where we were talking about getting audiences excited using fan fiction. And I just really love that episode simply because we don't really hear too much about fan fiction, and Joanna had a lot to share about it. So, it's great to have you on the show with us. Oh, man, I keep jumbling my words today. It was great to have you with us then and now for our holiday episode. And real quick, too, I know I'm just all over the place today, folks, but Joanna has been doing some serious like marketing and community lead stuff. And real quick, I know you have a little bit more recent news that you'd probably like to share of some recent activity, which is you've been involved with being a mentor for Women in Games International. So, real quick,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that because I know it's something awesome and that you're really excited about.
Yes, this was an awesome experience. I was a mentor, but actually I learned so much about myself and kind of went exploring what I wanted to do professionally. It's organized by Women in Games International, based in LA, so it's very US focused. We were a cohort of 28 mentors and 28 mentees, so super privileged. I was one of the few European people there, and we had such a amazing time with. Going into our strengths, talking about imposter syndrome, trying to pitch ourselves better. And I really recommend anybody wanting to do that. They do, I think, cohorts every quarter. So I think if you check the website of Wigi, which is the official name for it, there's definitely going to be listing to sign up for that. I really benefited a lot. It took 2 weeks in November and just finished it recently. And yeah, one of the best experiences for me, definitely.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And I know that you did a lot of work and everything else with that. So again, I'm so grateful that you had that opportunity and that you're sharing it with us today too, because it sounds like a great opportunity for other people who may
Yes.
be interested. So that said, thanks for sharing that. But we're here to have some fun, answer some questions, and we're going to kick it off with our Q Box holiday question that I've prepared for you. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite dessert during the holidays?
Oh wow, okay. It's one of the cakes my mom does every year. It's like a layered chocolate cake with grits, I believe it would be the closest equivalent. So like grits with milk, and it's made
Wow.
to be quite sweet. Yeah, and we call it, I think, Fawn's back because it's stripped. Like it doesn't make much sense because I think European fawns are different to like the fawns what fawns look like in the US, but that's the way we call it. It's like kind of like a zebra cake, but not really. We call it the fawn's back.
Okay.
And I love it because I don't usually eat grits, and then that's the only like holiday reason for me to eat it. And I really love it. Yeah, can share a recipe if you ever want it.
Wow. Yeah, why not? We'll throw that in the show notes. I wasn't expecting like things like recipes and stuff, but hey, let's do it. So if anybody
Always
wants, this sounds amazing. And what a unique and different way to incorporate grits into something like an amazing layered cake of chocolate goodness.
love it, love it. Like I
Uh,
always bug my mom to do it because it takes some time because you do like light layers and the chocolate layers and gotta make the cream as well to go in between the layers.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a vertical cake as well, so it's not like topped from like bottom to top, but like vertical, like the rectangle of goodness. Yeah, a little bit.
Rectangle of goodness. I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's like, and sharing the recipe too. So people, if you want that recipe that Joanna's mom makes, are you sure she's willing to share it?
I think she'd be okay with it. I
Okay.
shared a bunch of recipes with her as well that I got from friends.
So she
So I
owes you.
think, yeah, in that
All right
regard, yeah.
then. All right. So if you want to, so folks, if you want to go ahead and make this amazing thing, we'll make sure to include it in the show notes. That's awesome. Again, recipes. Maybe I should get some more on. Anyways, we digress, because uh, great hearing about that fun, almost like a little tradition too that you have going on too.
Yeah.
But part of us being here today is also to kind of reflect a little bit and look out the future. So the those two questions here that I have, we'll start with the reflection one, is simply, what about your year, this past year, went differently than you expected, and what did you learn from this?
Sure. So this year definitely was challenging for me because I went from one role, being a specialist, into being a manager. So it was kind of having, reality check in terms of my career ambitions and what I want to do. But I learned a lot. I traveled a lot, and obviously we met
Yep.
due to one of the travels in Boston. I met some amazing people in the US overall, you included,
Oh,
Andrew, of
thank you.
course. And I had a blast at Gamescom. I think this year definitely made me assured that I want to be part of video games and game dev. And I joined, the groups with Women in Games and Women in Games International. So it kind of like solidified me as a person. Like I really enjoyed this year. A lot of people are saying that this year, 2021, 2022, were the worst years possible, and they want to
Mm,
go back to like years prior. But for me, ever since COVID and the pandemic started, I actually started coming back to myself when I was before corporate. So yeah, I think this year was really good. Like I'm looking forward to what 23 throws my way.
that's really awesome to hear, because I mean, just having that different perspective, really, and reflecting upon
I'm
it.
very blessed. Like I know it. I had a number of health scares in 2021 and this year as well. So it kind of made me appreciate other things. And
Mm,
now at my parents' place as well, as you can see by the wall, and all the artful decorations, it made me appreciate family more and like spending time with people I like and enjoy spending time with. So I'm less rushing. I think like I'm much more secure in myself than I used to be, especially as a young professional. I'm good. I'm good. I know a lot of people are struggling, and I think I'm very blessed actually. Yeah, that
but
I
but
can be like
but
coming to
even
terms with things.
that's so great to hear. But even through those struggles, it's good to hear in terms of how your approach is, and everything else, and what that outlook looks like for you, and kind of putting your own positive spin on it. And maybe things were a little bit better than for you than others, but still being able uh, to move forward from that and stuff, I think can be really motivating and enlightening for some people. So that said, on the outlook perspective, it sounds like, I mean, you have a lot going on. You have been able to reflect and stuff. So all of this experience, all of these things that you learned, moving forward in 2023 and even potentially beyond, how are you planning to apply what you've learned, these experiences, to the year ahead?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna focus much more on like finding my tribe because like
Mm,
this year really made me aware that it's possible and that I should put myself forward more. I tend to isolate sometimes, like doing my own thing and like getting in the zone. And I think I'm much better among people. I think also kind of not losing the sparkle. Like sometimes I get very, very encouraged or very ecstatic about something, and then I start, having doubts along the way. So
mm.
I'm trying to work on that to kind of like, yeah, be like in the mood for like doing things, activities, more sort of. Do it step by step instead of like having a lot of like enthusiasm at the start and losing it along the way. And I think definitely putting myself out there. Like for example, one of the milestones for me this year was LinkedIn. Actually,
Mm.
like I had 3,000 followers slash connections this year, which to me a year ago was unattainable. I think I was under 1,000 last year, and it kind of made me aware that people want to hear my voice, want to connect with me, and that it makes sense for me to like produce content and do things and not just keep it to myself, which a lot of people tended to tell me, or like that I'm doing too much, I'm like too all over the place, and I think I want to like get to grips with that and just like do my own thing and like focus on it instead of just losing interest over time and just thinking nobody wants to hear it, nobody wants to see it, etc. That I used to do a lot in the past few years.
That is so awesome to hear, because I think it's a big problem that a lot of people have sometimes. We all feel that way to some level, some degree, no matter where we are in our lives and our careers
Yes.
and everything else. So just to hear how this past year and how you learned from it and how you're applying it, and that being a core focus, sounds so awesome to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it could be really helpful for a lot of people, especially some of the people
Yeah.
listening today. So, well, that's all we really have time for. I know it's so short. There's so many people that are on this with us today that I would love to talk even more with. But that said, before we go, would love for you to share what's a good way for people to reach out to you, connect with you. Maybe they're interested in joining Wiggy and would like to get your firsthand experience and ideas on that. So, what's a good way people can reach out and connect with you?
Sure. Especially LinkedIn, I think, is the great channel because I check it very, very often. Like Joanna Keller, just simply like that. Twitter, I'm at Cecily1, and we can, put it to the notes of as well of the show probably. Email as well. If you reach out to me on social media, I'm more than happy to share it. And Discord, like I'm on Discord as well. So the three main channels, I think: Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, plus email whenever anybody wants to reach out directly. Yeah.
Awesome. So, folks, that's how you can get in touch with Joanna. A lot of that information, too, is on that previous episode I mentioned earlier. And yeah, well, Joanna, thank you so much for being here with us today, for having this fun episode and being a part of it. And just can't thank you enough for this and everything else that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And we met in Boston and we are still continuing like to meet up and having chats. Like that's awesome. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, well, we're just grateful that you're able to continue to keep doing what you're doing and sharing your insights with the rest of us. So thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That conversation with Joanna was just really inspiring and motivating. And as you can see there, and if you've heard in the past episode I mentioned that she was on as well, I think you really get that sense about her. And I think it kind of shows too, not just from her personality, but man, everything she listed out and the things that she's really working on and striving for. I mean, there's so much to expand upon. But what are some of the key things that really stood out to you, Mustafa?
Yeah, I think there was something very, very human about that discussion. I think it's important to disconnect from kind of the machine of our own uh, ambitions, and to kind of center yourself in your personal aspirations, because the reality is we all define success differently, and I think there is sometimes a difference between our external perception of success and what success would actually mean to us internally. Like finding people that you enjoy working with or spending time with, networking and producing content in the ways that are actually meaningful and substantial to you, and even like developing games that are kind of close to your heart in a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, wow. Honestly, I guess I'll just go down to them because there's just so much I'm really trying to unpack from this whole conversation. But the key thing that she kind of led
Did I
with.
lose you?
No, I'm still here.
I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi adapter just kicked.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. You know what, guys? We're keeping this one in too. We're not editing this out. It's all real. It's as live as we can make it, as you promised, right, Mustafa?
Right, yeah.
So, anyways,
I might have written a check I couldn't cash on that one. But I'm sorry. I think I got cut off. I was essentially, I was trying to get across to summarize what I was saying is there is something to be said for having a sense of what it takes to be successful in terms of engaging with the market and things like we were discussing with Chris Zukowski's contribution. There's
Yeah.
also something to be said for satisfying that inner self because it's a passion driven field, right? And so if you're not doing something that really matters to you in a way that really creates enjoyment, um, I think there's an argument to be made that there are probably easier ways to to have a job and make money.
Yeah, and I mean exactly. But I mean, I think the whole process that she was going about that, excuse me, was really centered in what she led in with around self development, right? So, I mean, a few things, and like she mentioned, background in corporate. I believe it's like corporate marketing that she does. She had a background in, and she's worked in games for quite a bit. But I mean, this year, the fact that she was calling out that it was maybe questioning some of that because of how things were approached or how what really was going to mean was important to her, and with some of those kind of goals and focuses that like that's I think it still comes from the core of that self development and but validating these things in terms of her outlook and the outlook, mind you, super positive. And one thing that I called out too is just her saying how like grateful she is for these opportunities and stuff. And as there's going to be moments in our lives and groups of people where it might not seem so pleasant, and despite that, she pushed forward in her own way to kind of like see the bright side of things and still being grateful. And I think having that approach can kind of maybe lighten things up a bit. So when they are down, looking at what you do have and being grateful for that is a really important thing to keep in mind. And from that too, like, and I'll just list these off quickly because I could go on forever. But the fact that she's gaining more confidence and pushing herself more, finding different ways to not just find her drive, but also how do I keep that drive going? I mean, we talk about how burnout can be a problem and everything else from making games in general. So, but she's purposely with great intent looking, okay, I know I have this drive, I know I have this passion, but how can I keep that going? I mean, that's one of my complaints as a parent, at least, is like, how can I keep my energy levels going with 3 kids? Right. But, and that's essentially what she's doing in a much different way. But like, how do I keep that energy, that flow going? And how do I go and do things to improve upon that? I mean, we could all use something like that and probably don't use that type of reflection enough. But yeah, so many other things on like personal growth level. And she called out too, taking time to take breaks. She's looking to push herself more so she can put herself out there more and go beyond her comfort zone a little bit, but still being mindful that, hey, it's important to take breaks, and how she called out to being able to spend more time with her family and everything, and understanding that those types of interactions are just as important as everything else that she's striving for. So I know lots to unpack there, but still, it was just so great having her on the show because, she's like this big soaking sponge that is just dripping with all this like motivational, inspiring stuff. So that's what I got from it, and I hope that you guys listening did as well. So before we move on to our next guest, though, and as I said earlier after our interview with Victoria, what is your favorite holiday recipe? I know her Q Box question was dessert, but she was kind enough to share her mom's secret recipe for, I forgot the name of it, but that amazing chocolate cake with grits. So that will be in the show notes, but we want to know, what's your favorite holiday recipe? If you have one, please tweet it at us. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we may go ahead and do you think IGM could make a cookbook, Mustafa? Holiday cook?
Yeah, we could probably start a cooking show.
All right. Audio only cooking show. Are there podcasts out there? I don't know. But anyways.
You all heard it here first.
Yeah, right. If there's not, if that becomes a thing, yep, right here. If it is a thing, I guess we're late to the party. Um, but anyways, if you have a holiday recipe, share it. And if there's enough, I don't know. There may be some form of cooking book. I'll let Mustafa decide if he wants to make a cooking show for gamers, developers. Yeah,
I love that.
there could be something there. All right, but yeah, tweet your holiday favorite recipe if you have one at IGM Podcast, and yeah, and now we have another great guest. Looking forward to listening to what he has to say.
Hello.
Hello,
How are you
Chris.
doing?
Good.
Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. It's a beautiful sunny day. I can't complain.
Oh, well, it's not for us here.
I was gonna say a little jealous.
We
Sorry
had
to hear.
keep going, Mustafa. Sorry, I thought you were
Oh, okay.
commenting.
Oh no. I was we had a storm the past couple of days, so it's snowy and gross and cloudy out. So
Sorry to hear. Well, hopefully it'll get better over the next couple of days then.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Because this rain and rain and snow is just does not make for fun driving conditions, to say the least, among childhood activities that I do partake in. That said, Chris, thank you so much, everybody. We have Chris Wolf with us today, who is from Fellow Traveler. And Chris, you do a lot of biz dev and game scouting stuff for them, right? I was just making sure I'm correct there.
Yes, on the biz dev side, I work at Fellow Traveler as a biz dev. I do scouting for Thunderful, a different publisher, in Sweden, and do a couple of other gigs and biz dev focused projects all year round for different clients. But yeah, Fellow Traveler, Thunderful, biz dev, and scouting.
Cool.
And thanks for
You sound
having
like a guy with a lot of free time.
me. Yeah, it's been a year, hasn't it?
Yes, and of course we're glad that you're joining us today and everything. And yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar or don't quite recognize Chris's voice, if you go back to episode 133, we had a really cool conversation about like how to stand out in a digital landscape. I think some of that was actually around like with COVID a little bit, with a lot more virtual events
Yeah.
going on. Because I mean, as you've shared in that episode, you have a big history in terms of like organizing events and things. So it was a really cool conversation around that. And maybe this was intentional. I don't know.
We had a habit of spending the holidays with you, Chris, because you wrote our New Year's special a couple of years back.
Pretty much, yeah. I remember it was the three of us and Jenny, if I recall correctly.
Yes, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Feels like forever ago, but also sort of like 3 months ago. It's
Yeah, right.
Sounds weird.
100%.
since COVID time just does not make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's really weird. So here we are again with another holiday episode. Well, that was like we called it end of year special. I don't know. It's all on theme one way or another. So yeah, for anybody getting nostalgic, you can go back to that episode. But otherwise, we're here to have some fun today, ask some questions, and yeah, I mean, I think Mustafa, we're ready to throw Chris into our Q-Box holiday round, which is really just a question. But Chris, are you ready?
I am. Let's go.
Okay. So the Q-Box question for you is, what's a holiday tradition you have with your friends or family?
It's a good question. I guess I'll split up into two parts. Family, typically, and I think the English word for that is the same as in German. We do raclette. Does that ring a bell? Is that something that you would know?
I think
Or is it me?
I think someone else we spoke with today or spoke with earlier mentioned that, and I can't remember though what it was. So please
Cool.
tell us.
Okay. Yeah. Well, basically, it's just the food part of the holidays that we do. Raclette, I think, a Swiss. Originated in Switzerland, if I recall correctly. We cut up some food. Everyone gets their own little pan. You have like basically this heating unit in the middle of the table, and then you just toss a bunch of like food, veggies, meat. If you eat meat into your pans or on top of the like stove that it comes with, a stove top basically that it comes with. And it's like a nice prolonged dinner basically that everyone can sort of like customize to their own needs and interests. That's basically that something that we've been doing since as far as I remember all the way back as kids with my family. That's always nice get together, and the moment that everyone sort of like just settles in, realizes it's Christmas. We used to, as kids, obviously, like we had to open up presents before because everyone's nervous and everyone's panicking. It's like, oh, I want to unwrap my gifts right now. And then as me and my sister have grown up over the last, well, not the last years, like decade or so, that process has basically swapped with us just eating food first and then just very relaxed afterwards, getting to presents and such. So it's just a nice part of family tradition, which means a lot to everyone. And then and friends, very different, but basically the day before when we celebrate Christmas here in Germany, we meet up on the 23rd of December. We get a little bit tipsy and hang out in someone's garage and just have a nice day. And that's pretty much it. So it's not a very exciting tradition, but it's a nice way to reconnect with like high school friends that I haven't seen throughout the year. It's good, nice highlight.
I feel like that kind of hits along the whole like holiday spectrum, though, of like getting to have kind of the fun, wholesome time with families, the catching up with friends, and a little bit of libation never hurt anybody. So
exactly, yeah, it's a good mix.
I don't know if history supports me on that one, but I'm going to double down on it.
No, that's really great. And with the last one too, with your friends, I mean, that just sounds, I don't know. I love the simplicity of it, right? And this might sound a little lame, and I'm opening up a little bit more here, but there's some movie on Netflix called Let It Snow, and it's just about these like pre-college or like these high school teenagers, and there's a snow day, and everybody's just excited for the holidays and stuff, and just you describing that made me think of that film. And I don't know, people, you can call me lame, but I actually like it. It was a lot of fun, but it had the same kind of sentiment that Chris just shared in terms of just hanging out there. So I'm glad you share that. And the food thing, I mean, man, with your family, that I was like, all right, I think we got to start some new traditions over here in the in my household. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for chatting about it. It's something I don't really think about a lot. I'm not a tradition guy typically, but I guess everyone has their own little things that they look forward to.
Nice. Very true. Yeah, everybody has their own little things, and we have some things that we're looking forward to as well. Some questions that, because Mustafa, you and I really like to kind of like, as we have done in our year-end specials, think about like reflection and kind of outlook there. So why don't you lead us in with the question that we have for Chris about reflecting upon this past year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, our first question for you is kind of looking back over your year, which you've described as being pretty robust. So, what about it went differently than you expected, and what did you learn from that experience?
I guess pretty much that. It was a very busy year, and I started into 2022 thinking I'd probably make some changes to how I work and sort of my my split commitments between different companies. I'm very much like these days working some, I guess, like independent consultant, contractor, whatever you want to call it. And starting into 2022, I was thinking of like just doing a little bit less work, but also less different clients. What I realized every once in a while is I'm terrible at saying no, so that didn't work out. work gets done. It's fun. I'm very excited about working with the people that I do work with. I'm very fortunate. But yeah, that went very different. For 2023, that's I guess I might be jumping ahead here, but yeah, it's I think I'll be looking at things once again over the holiday break, and we'll see.
Interesting. So you're saying that? So it sounds like that in terms of you're taking on new things and being ambitious with these things. And I mean, You always are. As far as I've always known you, that's always been like your mentality and everything. Like, like let's tackle it and do these things and just get a lot done. But then at the same time, well, you're so passionate and willing to do these things. You're making some recollections in term or realizing that it's just I might be saying yes to too many things.
Pretty much, yeah. Especially since I like one big part of 2022 for me was moving cities. Moved from Munich
That's right.
in
Yeah.
Germany to Cologne, also in Germany. Um, and that was a big like moment where I realized like, oh, maybe I just want to have a little bit more time outside of work and just explore the city and hang out with friends and travel a bit more and go to more concerts again, especially after like a 2-year break.
Yeah.
Within 2 years, it didn't really make a difference. Like all of us were sitting at home, wouldn't go out on a Friday night. You wouldn't go to a concert because that just wasn't possible. Now that it is, and that things are opening up slowly, it's like, well, maybe there's more to life than just work every day all the time. It's been I think like a very positive development for me, realizing that more and trying to force myself to also hold me accountable to what I say.
Yeah. Great thing to do, of course, because as you're realizing, those things are important. So, this is actually a really great segue then to the follow up here is kind of what your outlook is looking for the year to come, and how are you applying in different ways? And you shared one about making more time for yourself, but how else do you plan to apply these experience and what you learned from them in this coming year?
Yeah, definitely opening up my schedule a little bit more. From time to time, just having to say no to things. Started that. It's not easy. Always feel terrible, but letting someone down when you're invited to do a talk or just get a chance to go to an event or work on a cool project. Obviously, it's difficult then to pass on these opportunities, but ultimately, I figure that that's best for me to do a little bit less, but also focus a lot more on what I ultimately want to do long term, hopefully, within this industry, and that's business development. So I'm going to cut some things out of my schedule that were part of what I did in the industry for the past couple of years with events and scouting and project management. And while there's still going to be bits and pieces of that left within my work schedule, definitely just focusing more on doubling down on biz dev because that's what excites me. The prospect of being able to go out there and negotiate and secure cool opportunities for developers, or also make sure that there's a decent cash flow there, so developers can maybe not only make game number one but also game number two, no matter how the sales end up being. That's just something that excites me. So I'll be doing more of that and focusing more on gathering some skills or some additional skills within that field. I think going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully, hopefully I'll stick to that next year. We'll see a year from now or so when I look back on it if I actually followed through. But that's very much the plan.
That's awesome. Well, we might just have to hold you accountable for that. So if you need some extra accountability, here we are.
I appreciate that a lot. I'll make sure to follow up every once in a while.
Awesome. Well, I don't have anything else. That was really insightful, though. Mustafa, anything on your end to glean
Yeah,
from? Or?
I just want to, and I'm sorry if I'm going backwards a little bit, but I love what you said, Chris, about the balance of work and life experiences and taking the moment to kind of decompress and do things that you're passionate about in your personal life too. Because I think that's something particularly that our generation really struggles with, especially I would say in a space like games, where so much of the things we aspire to are so close to the things we perceive as fun. It gets hard to kind of differentiate between like ultimately professional experiences and still kind of fulfilling the self. So I really appreciate the way you dug into that.
Difficult, isn't it? We're such a passion-driven industry that sometimes you forget to maybe take some time for yourself outside of your hobby or your work or whatever it might be, to enjoy the other perks of life. And I think that's a good takeaway overall to consider every once in a while.
Absolutely. All right, Chris. Well, we really appreciate you being on the show today and being a part of this special show. But before we leave, we would love for you to share what's the best way people can reach out or connect with you.
A good question these days, especially. At the moment, it remains Twitter. We shall see if that might change, which is likely, I assume, in
I feel
2023.
like everybody has
Otherwise-
said that.
Everybody has said that. So
Everybody.
everybody said Twitter with a disclaimer.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it is how it is. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the more corporate side of things, I guess, LinkedIn, or I'm not really a person that like sticks super or keeps their social media accounts very privately. So if it ends up being Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, like I'm always excited to connect with more folks in this industry. But for now, probably still Twitter. I have not been able to yet set up a Mastodon account. I guess I should take care of that at some point.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that, Chris. And there you go, folks, for anybody looking to reach out to Chris. And Chris, thanks again for being a part of this episode with us. We really enjoyed your insights and what you had to share.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope, best of luck with the remainder of your guests. And thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to reconnecting in 2023 again, outside or inside of a podcast environment.
Awesome.
Here's to that.
It was so great having Chris back on the show again. I mean, he's just such a pleasant dude, right?
Yes, and the second participant in our gauntlet of Chris's for this episode.
Yeah, right. Like, it's unfortunate we couldn't get a Chris Fecta going on.
Right, yeah.
But that's okay. But anyways, it was great hearing Chris and what he had to share with us. And yeah, what are the key points that stood out for you?
Yeah, one thing that I always really like is that in the times that he's been on with us previously, like Chris is a very grounded individual and has a very holistic perspective on this industry. It does a really good job of discussing like compartmentalization. The passion that I was describing when we were talking about your discussion with Joanna is a double-edged sword, because I think it sometimes puts us in a perspective where we are like, well, what I'm doing is fun, so it's okay for me to put all of my time and energy and resources into it.
Right.
But the irony of that is, when devs and gamers in general, when you immerse yourself so much in the culture that you don't allow yourself to soak in the other aspects of being, it actually limits your perspective, and I would say has the potential of making you worse at what you do. Having a more well-rounded lifestyle and structure is key, I believe, to making sure all of those things work in tandem. Yeah, but it's also, his contributions I felt were very topical, because I know, you and I have had a lot of conversations about like restructuring our responsibilities and commitments this year. Really kind of triaging, if you will, prioritizing, like, what do I have the capacity for? Where can I draw the line in the sand and ensure that I'm giving my best to everything that I'm doing, rather than spreading myself so thin that nobody gets the best of what I'm capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, I think we all can get kind of caught in that trap, and it's obviously with the best intentions. And actually, something Chris didn't share here on the show, but obviously he alluded in his reflection, or mentioned in his reflection, was I've kept in touch with him on a fairly regular basis whenever we can and we're available. But I remember one comment he said in past, if I remember correctly, was along the lines of kind of what he shared in his reflection was just like, he's like, yeah, because I think he's like, oh, I usually stay up really late. And that's when we were talking. I'm like, isn't it late for you? Because I think it's like a 6-hour difference, and it was my close to evening. He's like, yeah, I do. And I think the fact that was happening was somewhat, and again, I don't know specifically, but from what I gathered, was somewhat a result of him kind of saying yes to everything, because he's just, like you said, so passionate and stuff. And I think that's what he's like, what he shared with us today, because this conversation happened like a few months ago, at least maybe about 6 months ago or so. So I think that was part of his reflection, is being like, hey, look, this is all good and everything, but that key takeaway for me that he mentioned too is just saying, like, do less and just kind of focus more. So focus more, providing more value, providing into the work that you're doing. And then he also called out to, which I kind of a quote that I want to say to this was like saying no to more things. And this is a problem I think all of us deal with and have is simply the fact of, how do you say no? And it's hard to, especially when maybe your focus is really to be, a community leader, or to like a lot of the people who we've talked to today are, and everything. And so it can be a challenge sometimes to say no to things, because the quote I have here is, when you're saying yes to one thing, now you're saying no to everything else, right? And I think we forget to realize that. We lead with our passions and ambitions, and everything else, like you shared before, but then next thing you know, we're realizing that whatever maybe other goals and other things that we have in, set, that we're not accomplishing that because we're just spreading ourselves too thin. So, well, it can be challenging and stuff. And as Chris has identified, and really moving forward with the next year, think about what you're saying yes to, and what that means in terms of everything else, and what you are saying no to by doing that. And I don't think we think about that too often enough. And that's why it's so great to hear Chris say that, because it can be really empowering. And I think the results that we can get in ourselves by applying just a simple concept like that can probably be quite staggering, but we won't know until we say no.
Yeah.
So again, it was awesome having Chris on the show, and such a good story, right? With the family and that tradition of,
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I make this happen at my house? I
Even
really,
like the friends tradition of like thinking of those people I haven't seen since high school, and I'm like, I wonder.
I know,
wonder
right?
if we have like a nearby garage we could.
Yeah, I was thinking, whose garage would we be?
Yeah.
I'm now thinking of various garages to hang out in.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's such a good one. But yeah, I mean, what's your holiday traditions, everybody? Like, what kind of fun things do you do with your friends, or whatever? And I'm sure there might be even funny stories around that. But whatever you are open and caring to share with us, because sharing is caring, then do so at IGM Podcast. Let us know what your traditions and fun things you do with your friends and family are, and because we'd love to hear about them. All right, then. So I guess we're going to move on to our next guest. Hello? Oh, no, I can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
There is a mute button on my headphones. That's exactly where my hands go when I pick it up. And so this is my curse. And I usually remember not to put my finger there, but
No worries. So how are you, Osama?
I'm on top of the world. How you doing?
I am doing great and can't thank you enough for being with us here today. Folks, I have Osama Dorias here with us today from Blizzard, the lead content designer there. And he appeared, wow, it's been a while now. It was episode, go figure. I didn't write down the episode number.
I can't remember.
I wouldn't expect you to. Don't worry, it will be in the show notes. But it was the episode where we talked about, I want to say it was like 200 and something, It was, no, you know what? It was one of the earlier because I think you were the episode that marked the opening of season 2. But you'll just
sounds familiar.
But anyways, it was the episode where we talked about how to market to cultural audiences, which really was such a great one to have, because it was the first time we ever really had that type of content on the show before. And it was just great coming from you, because what really inspired me to even have that conversation in the first place was that talk you did at GDC a while ago. And it was just
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we just had to have a conversation like that again. And I think since then we've had a few others with other guests too. But great that you were one of the first to be on and participate and share so much insight around that subject. So thank you.
Thank you, and it was great meeting you finally after all these years at JDC. Was it earlier this year? Time is
Yeah,
weird.
I know
It was earlier this year.
It doesn't feel like it because now
Right?
the next GDC is on the horizon and
Yes.
and just, but still, yeah, no, definitely.
Speaking of which, I got to prepare for that. I didn't buy a ticket or anything. I'm giving a talk, and I'm not ready at all. I'm so last minute. It's ridiculous.
No, yeah, well, it's you should be all set, but yeah, definitely get on top of that.
Yeah, I really should. Yeah, just in case they run out of hotels, I have to stay in a neighboring city or something.
Oh no! Well, hopefully
Oh,
that doesn't
no.
happen. Well, again, can't thank of you so much for being here and I'm part of our holiday episode. It's just have so many great guests and glad that you could be one of them. And
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
yeah, of course. Well, as a lot of our listeners are already familiar with this whole process, but before we have some questions, but the ones that we really want to dive in with first is our holiday Q box round with one special question. So, are you ready for that?
I have no idea what's coming at me, so yeah, bring it.
All right. So the question is, what was your favorite video game you received as a gift?
That I received as a gift specifically. Let's see. Which one blew my socks off? It's hard. Okay, I think I have to divide games in two categories. The before times, like the before I was a game designer, and the after I was a game designer, because
Okay.
I see games very differently
I could see
since
that.
then. And it's very hard to remember anything from before time. So, like, my answer is from the more recent times. My friend George gifted me this game called Risk of Rain.
Okay.
I had not heard about it. I looked at the screenshots, did not look very impressed. Uh, and I started playing it, and then 50 hours later, I'm like, wow, I think I like this game. I got instantly hooked. I don't really receive many games as gifts, but that's probably my favorite one that I received as a gift, especially in recent years. As a kid, I actually worked very early, and I bought a lot of my games. So I didn't receive many games as gifts either, but my parents bought me some. Do those count as well?
Yeah,
The games that my parents bought me?
that's
Yeah,
fine
because
too.
then I would probably have 100 tied for first place. I'll stick with Risk of Rain for
Okay.
my answer.
That's a good one though. That's a there's a nice little story behind it too. Like you're just like, I don't know, and then like 50 hours later.
Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. It was a great game.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that with us. It was definitely a great take in hearing that moment and everything. Now, speaking of moments and everything else, we want to take some time to are a little curious in terms of how you are with like it's a time of the season where we like to reflect a lot and look out to the new year coming. So, on the concept and idea of reflection, what was it about your year, this past year, that went differently than you expected? And what did you learn from this?
How much time do I have?
Yup.
I have time. So like in the spirit of oversharing, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I had a pretty bad burnout last year. I overworked myself, and as a result, I had to take some time off. I was actually told to take some time off by my doctor because I get obsessed with work. I am a workaholic, and I don't say that in a good way, like I wish I wasn't type situation. Actually, I have to say that I'm a recovering workaholic now. I am trying my best not to be. And this year, I learned not to be. I left the gaming industry in a sense. I went to work for Unity, not as a game designer, even though Unity is a game engine maker. They're more tech as a company in their
Yep.
philosophy and the way that they're structured. So I didn't entirely leave, but I at least left my profession of game design, only to fall back in love with it when I was far away from it and understand what it is to have a healthy relationship with one's career, and then to come back to it. I'm on holiday break right now, and I don't think about work, which is shocking. That never happens to me. I'm actually able to disconnect and heal and recharge and get excited for. I'm working on so many fun little side projects. I can't wait to tell people about. Um, that is the thing that I've learned through this year, is that there's more. Like, you could enjoy your work, and I do love my work, but there's more to life than work, and really we have to not fall into that trap of just thinking about work and working all the time. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, so well said. And sometimes, unfortunately, we have to have these moments that bring us to that point where it sounds like it was for you, but now it just sounds like there's so much more that you're looking forward to.
Yes,
Like
yes.
and we can't even begin to think. I can't even begin to think, and I'm sure you can't even to some degree. Like what that even entails. It's just the opportunities are endless, right?
100%. I think it's also healthy to separate our feelings of well-being from what's happening at work, because good things happen at work and bad things happen at work. And if all we think about is work all the time, then our emotions are 100% tied to that. And actually,
Mm.
burnout isn't overwork. Burnout is workplace depression, and it comes. Part of it is exacerbated by overwork, but a lot of it is when you're feeling unfulfilled at work, or when you're
Yep.
feeling like things aren't going well. You get cynical, you get angry, and if you have nothing else to fall back on, you don't have friends outside the industry that could ground you. You don't have things to look forward to that happen after work. It just, it's a positive feedback loop, and it just keeps feeding itself until eventually. I don't know if people are familiar with the term positive feedback loop, but positive
Yes.
feedback loop isn't a good thing necessarily. It just means the more something happens, the more of that thing happens. It's positive in that sense.
Yes.
um, and you'll just keep digging into those negative emotions, and you can't climb back out. So you need to have yourself grounded. You need to have hobbies, a life, friends who are not who are part of your industry, because they could, um, you relate to your experiences, but another healthy group of friends who are not part of your industry, who ground you in the realities of the world, and so that you don't fall into the trap of always thinking about the same things over and over.
Yeah, well said, and really good guidance there too. Because again, like you said, we can get in these cycles, getting that positive feedback, in the terms of like it just keep feeding into that it feeds that monster, right?
Yes,
And then
exactly.
next thing you know, we're caught and we're not really aligned with life as a whole. Just this one part of it. So cool. I mean, can't thank you enough for sharing that with us. And you shared a little bit, you alluded a little bit to this, but I'm curious and more in terms of your outlook, your realization with all of this and stuff. How do you apply? How do you plan to apply what you learn moving forward? So you already got some side projects. What about, I don't know, a few other things that you have in mind with this new outlook and perspective?
Well, the main thing is I won't work overtime anymore. Like, I work a fixed set of hours, and that's it. That way, it allows me to disconnect at the end of my day and spend time with my family, and do things that matter to me, only me, or you know what I mean. That's the main thing. The second thing is, actually, I've put into place into my life a lot of organization tactics, so to make sure that I can always focus on what's important to me, and what's important to my family, but also what's important to other people, and not focus on the wrong things. Is one of the problems I have, is I get excited about a thing, and then I dive deep into it, and I get obsessed with it, and then I'm exhausted as a result. So this is a thing to help me organize my time and gain control of it. And then, I don't know if you've been following me on Twitter recently, but I've, like, my inbox is the smallest it's ever been, ever been. I have 20 messages in my inbox, down from thousands
Oh man, I
last
can
year.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Now I if someone has an exciting shiny new project that they want me to be part of, I look at my schedule and I say, well, the earliest I could start is in March, or I have to cut out this other thing I'm excited about in February,
Yeah.
and that helps big time not to overload myself with a million things. And I apply that at work in a similar way. Like, oh, you need this thing from me and this thing from me. Well, what's the priority? Because this is how much time I have. So yeah, you'll get both, but not by this schedule or this time or this kind of thing. And what's really important to me and my values is that whatever I apply to myself, I also apply to my team. So if I don't like, I model the behavior that I want my team to follow.
Mm.
I don't do overtime, but neither do they. I don't overload myself with work, but I don't do it for them as well. You'll get what you get. And I think that's healthier. And I think in the end, I actually truly believe the quality of the work and the quantity of the work
Yeah.
will be higher. Both. Like, I really truly believe that the trap that we fall into is we overwork ourselves, then we produce bad quality work because we're exhausted, and then we spend more time trying to fix it to get it to the level that
Yeah.
we could have gotten it if we had just spent a decent, respectable amount of time on it to begin with, and given ourselves breathing room to think about it ahead instead of just flailing and delivering whatever we can in unrealistic deadlines to begin with. So, in my personal opinion, I've worked in both conditions, and I do believe that the games that I worked on where my conditions were healthier were better as a result of me working fewer hours. And so that's how I would apply it in my personal life and in my professional life.
Absolutely love that. And, again, these things can't be overemphasized enough. These conversations happen on a regular basis, and I think your insight and your story and your even your own personal experience is a good way to really showcase this in terms of it's not just something we're saying because of we know people would like more time type thing. It goes so much deeper, as you said, with the well-being and everything else. So thank you so much for sharing all that, because I can't think of a better way and kind of what we're here for today as this holiday episode to really think back and the importance of these things, because as much as we love doing things in games and everything else, there's still so much more important element to games than just games. It's our lives, and if we're not fulfilling our lives, we're not fulfilling games, we're not fulfilling it all trickles down, right?
100%, 100%. We're human beings in the end. We can't forget that or lose track of that. Human beings have needs, and we have to meet those needs.
Absolutely. Well, Osama, I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing that with us. For people who do want to get in touch with you and just like say hi or whatever, what's the best way that they can do that?
My DMs are open on Twitter, so at Osama Dorias is where you'll find me. OSAMADORIAS. And I used to say that I will reply eventually, but now I'm pretty good at replying pretty quickly. So have at it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. It's really been great to have you here on the show today.
It's a pleasure, and thank you again for having me. Have a good day.
So Mustafa isn't here, isn't able to be here with me today to go over the commentary, but with what Osama had to share, I think was just really enlightening and something we, as I called out earlier, something we really don't think about all too much. And the fact that he was able to be so sincere and open with us to share how important time really is, and how we tend to forget the importance of it in terms of what it means to us and overworking. I mean, he was at a point where, like you said, even his doctor was saying how he really needs to be mindful and change his behavior and how he sees his work and everything. And here he is, so passionate, such a passionate individual about what it is he does and how much he loves it and everything. It got to a point where it was like taking over his life. So I that's one thing I can't think enough about in terms of the different key points and stuff he's calling out to is like having that healthy relationship, with your work. Because even if you're passionate about it and excited and everything, that doesn't necessarily mean it can't become it can become something other than a healthy relationship. And I think we tend to have that problem as a whole, where we get caught in that trap. We get caught in that positive feedback loop that he mentioned, to the point where it brought him to a position where I think it was really hard on him. And so, again, so grateful that he was able to share that with us. And then, for his outlook and moving forward. And we share this with another guest. There's been so many. I'm trying to remember which one, but where essentially they were saying, like, if you say yes to one thing, what else are you really saying no to? And that's what it sounds like that was exactly happening to Osama. He was saying yes to all these things because he's so passionate and everything else, but he was saying no to so many other things too. And it wasn't just work related, it was also his family. And then and how he further apply this too, it's like, hey, look, this is something I'm practicing and I believe in and I know it's going to be beneficial, but it's also something I'm going to carry over to my team. And then from that, even he said himself, and I'm a strong proponent of this too, it's like, well, if you're not providing yourself the time and energy to really rest and take that break, you're not only going to miss out on the quality of work, but he's right, you're also going to miss out on the quantity. So again, we tend to pressure ourselves so much with the type of work that we're doing and how passionate we are, and we all have our reasons for why we have to get this done, why we have to do all these things. But the important factor is really to take that time. And I can't think of a better person to really share that with us. And I'm glad Osama was open enough where he could share that with us. So we really have a good understanding on the value of our time and our well-being and how we can stay healthy. So not just us as people can be healthy and do the things we love and be fulfilled and everything, but that can still happen with your work and being fulfilled and being passionate about what you're doing. Because if we forget about that, then ultimately we do have that burnout and we do have those problems. And hopefully we can understand these things can occur earlier on, and it just makes us better in the long run. So quick shout out to Osama again. Thank you for sharing that, because I really think it's really helpful stuff that we tend not to think about as much as we need to. So with all that said, let's go to our next guest. This one is definitely going to be a really fun one.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, Jenny. Hey, everybody. I have Jenny Wyndham here with me today. It's so amazing to see you again, to hear you again. It's been so long.
I know. It's been so long, and like time is just still weird. It's like I feel like it's been forever. I hope you're doing great.
Yeah, I know it has been, and thank you. I definitely have been. And for those of you who can't remember, this is, well, Ava said, Jenny Wyndham, and she's been doing a lot. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. You're currently with Kepler Interactive, and you're doing some like community and influencer strategy there and such. And you're doing a lot of other things too, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you just got your hands
Yeah.
on so many things.
I do. Yeah. I also am an advisor at Kowloon Nights, which is an international game fund, which is really fun because I get to see a lot of game pitches and then provide feedback on them. And
Awesome.
I'm also with Wholesome Games. And so we're a group who really loves curating wholesome games. Who would have thought? And we do showcases a couple times a year, and I also do my own content creation. So I stream and make YouTube videos and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so Jenny is just so, like, I don't know, involved and passionate with everything she does. It's great. And I'm sure you heard some of that too back in, wow, here we go now. Episode 124. That's where you first
Wow.
appeared on the show, and that was you were talking about how to keep your community healthy. And this was back when you were at Rose City Games. Can you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It feels like so long ago. It really does. Yeah.
Right. And then you also appeared again on episode 141, which was an end of a year special, and you were there with Chris Wolf. And
Yes.
yeah, wow. And it looks like it's funny because I believe it was the last person we just interviewed was actually Chris Wolf. So it's like you both are back, but
Hey.
just not in the panel setup we had before. But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's great having you guys back. So we love having you back. We absolutely thank you for joining our holiday episode, and to kind of go with the flow of things and keep things fun and energetic. We're gonna get right into our Q-Box holiday questions.
All right.
Question, because it's just one this time. But at any rate, are you ready for the question we have prepared for you today?
I am ready.
All right, what was your favorite childhood holiday memory?
Oh, okay. This is classic. I feel like from probably a lot of folks our age in our age bracket, but
Okay.
getting the Nintendo 64
Uh,
for Christmas. It was something, okay, so we didn't, as kids, my brother and I, we didn't get a ton of presents every holiday, and we knew that we had to be smart if we wanted to get something as big as a Nintendo 64. Like getting a console was a very big deal.
mm,
And so we like teamed up our powers. We were like, okay, we're not going to ask for anything else. Like we just really want to make sure to get this Nintendo 64. And I mean, my mom was good because the whole time she had us going like we were not going to get it. She was like,
oh.
"Yeah, it's too expensive. Like, I don't know, maybe we'll wait for it to go on sale later." And I'm like, "Mom, you don't understand." And so we thought, we're like, we're probably not going to get it. We tried so hard, we got so far. In the end, it didn't even matter. And we had opened up a few other presents for Christmas that were under the tree, and my mom was like, "Wait, what's this in this back corner here that we like had not noticed?" She pulls out this big box, and we both were like, "No, no way, this can't be it. What?" And we start opening it, and like I think it's the most excited both of us been. Like we did the whole, like we saw the like logo, the little peak of the end cube, that was the logo. And
yeah.
both of us started screaming and yelling and like hitting the box. And oh, it was great. So that's probably my favorite
Oh,
present memory.
that is such a good story. That's like it was like the iconic like Christmas story
Yeah.
movie wrapped into the whole new 8-bit Christmas. I guess that is going out and coming around, and it's just like those two things. That is just, it couldn't get any more perfect than that. And what's
Yeah.
really funny is earlier in the show, Mustafa was with me, and we talked about a call out to if people had that moment when they got their console, and then
Yeah.
just
Oh,
it,
it's like we planned this.
yeah, which not really. I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we planned, and this was not one of them in terms of how we're just all on the same wavelength, I guess.
Mhm.
But that was priceless, and thank you for sharing that with us because that is such a
Yeah.
good moment. So, love it. All right, well, in light of this and everything else that we have going on for the holidays, we also want to do a little bit of reflecting and outlook. And we're just curious from your perspective and everything else, what about the year went differently than you expected, and what did you learn from this?
I think me shifting from like solely working on community and being community manager and moving into the influencer space and almost that like influencer community, influencer relations space, in addition to still working in a lot of community spaces, has been different. Yeah, I never thought that's something I would do.
Hmm.
And it's been really, really enjoyable. I've really loved getting to know all the creators that I've gotten to work with over the year. And it's shown me just, I do content creation. So I always felt a little bit weird, like, oh, I should stay away from this because it's something I do. But really, it's provided me with a lot of insight on what works and what doesn't when reaching out to folks. And I think I've just learned from the developer side even more how important it is to work with creators and to work with streamers and podcasters and YouTubers because more and more, I think people are reaching out to their communities for advice on what to play, and people are reaching out to, who do you trust? Who do you like watch play games? Who do you hang out with? And who do you go to for those recommendations for the next coolest thing that you should try? And more I'm learning like being able to work with more creators to help them find their favorite games and then be able to share even more games like exponentially that way. That's been really, really exciting. So yeah, that's been unexpected because I didn't think I would enjoy it. To be really honest, I was very apprehensive, but it's been really, really fun. And I've been very lucky. All of the folks I've worked with are absolutely wonderful. And I just get to go to them and say, hey, I've got keys. I've got this cool thing. Do you want to be a part of it? So it's been very, very fun this year doing that work.
Oh, that's really awesome to hear because it sounds like that little list of perspectives that you have is just really interesting, in how you're able to apply these things and learn from them, especially from, like you said, you were coming from a developer side, but now you have to kind of look at from various different angles, especially if you're working with like developers or if you're working with influencers, and really trying to be that that main source to kind of guiding both sides to ultimately get what everybody wants, and that's to have more fun and get to know more games and play more games. So that's great. That said, from we're considering, like, what does this everything mean from an outlook perspective? So from what you experienced, how do you plan to start applying some of these things that you learned into the new year?
I think one thing that I would love to do is just continue to build relationships. From the community side of things, a lot of my relationship building was with the players. And so now my hope is to build more relationships with creators. But I think more importantly, I just really hope to continue like finding people who are on the same like wavelength in terms of, hey, I want to create something that brings like joy to the world, that brings value and intention to the world. And I think that's something that I really want to focus and hone in on, is not just reaching out to everyone because I want to know everyone, but really focusing in on like who is really trying to do some great work and how can I support them. So I think that intentionality is something I really want to bring into next year.
I absolutely love that, and can't thank you enough for sharing that, because that is just such a key and important thing that we should all really strive for in everything we do, but especially in this area of influencers and connecting others and building those relationships. So wow, Jenny, I really can't thank you enough for sharing all this really insightful stuff, and it sounds like it looks like a fun year for you too. But unfortunately, we got to close here. But before we do, what are ways that people can get in touch with you? And I'm sure there might be various different reasons they have, because you're involved with so much. But what's the best way that people can reach out to you in case they want to connect or learn about some of the other things that you're working on? What is that?
Yeah, well, if Twitter is still around, my handle is. We don't know what's going to happen.
Everybody has been saying that all the interviews. Well, if Twitter's still around, okay, sorry.
But yeah, Twitter is at Kimchica25. Pretty much everywhere else, I am at Kimchica. So Twitch, YouTube, Mastodon, Tumblr. Like I've acquired handles on everything now just to be safe. But as of right now, I guess the most easiest place is Twitter, and my email is on there as well. So those are probably the best places to find me.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Happy New Year. And thanks for having me.
Andrew, I'm very bummed I had to miss this one. I'm super excited that somebody finally gave us their big console moment. And it was the Nintendo 64 at that, truly a revolution.
Right?
So, yeah, pretty insightful conversation as always with Jenny Wyndham. What would you say for you were some of your key takeaways?
Oh man, so many. But no, I boiled it down to a few. So when she was talking about like kind of that shift from the community to the influencer space, what I thought was really awesome in her experience in that and learning was really just how she approached it all, which was helping others finding games to enjoy. And the reason why I absolutely love this approach, and it leads up to her following comment, which I'll comment on in a moment. But it's because that approach is really sincere. It's welcoming and it's being like empathetic towards your audience in terms of her job as, one of her main jobs actually as being outreaching to influencers. Like having that initial approach is definitely a good one and one that everybody should really follow. I mean, it's just it makes sense when you're opening up to other people's to helping like connect with them and stuff. That's always a great way. But also on another end is that approach is also not salesy. And I know like people sometimes when they get involved with marketing, they're always concerned with the idea of, oh, I might be salesy, I might be trying to pitch too hard or whatever. But with that initial approach that she said, and just helping others finding games to enjoy, you're not really salesy. You're actually helping them out. You're doing them a favor. So that was a key one. And another one was simply how she led in with these experiences and everything, and saying her outlook for the new year is just building more relationships with creators. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's just going to work in her favor in terms of what her objectives are. It's going to work for, the creators she's working with, and it's working with the audiences. So all together, I mean, like she said, she's really doing everything possible to, make content and connections that have intent and value, and really showcasing and supporting the creators that have that type of thing. It's just, I don't know, it's just such a great way of going about things. And that's why I love that she shared that with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would echo too that like the one of the common themes I think we've been really seeing is people talking about the evolutions of their responsibilities. And I think so often we center in the games industry conversation, because the barrier to entry is so high and so low simultaneously somehow. I feel like we always center the breaking in, like how do I get into the industry? How do I get a job? How do I get started? That's always the focus. But I don't think nearly enough we have conversations about what it is to make meaningful progress in your career. And in terms of growing your responsibilities, not necessarily just in terms of making more or being in a higher position, but specifically molding more of your day-to-day around what it is you're passionate about. And so that's something I always really enjoy hearing that from people, that the journey kind of doesn't stop once you get started. It really is only the beginning.
That's a really interesting point that you make about like kind of the evolution of learning that everybody is having, and kind of taking like that day to day and then bringing it into their passion. And not only that, like to kind of piggyback off that, it's those things plus looking at the the passion, but also how it can be still very objective focused in terms of their goals and everything else that they're striving for. And as we all know, none of this happens. None of these realizations happen, even though we recorded these interviews and they're all in bite-sized pieces. None of this happened like immediately. I know it's easy for us to then share this content and people listening for the first time, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But some people, I mean, it took them a long time to figure this out too. And I think that's important to remember too, but it's just a good call out in terms of this initial process and experience, and how people come and how they incorporate these things from their day-to-day into their passions, and then into longer term objectives, and then ultimately into their goals. And then once they hit that point, like let's say another year from now, if we do the same exact episode, same people, it'd be really interesting to see kind of like how they even grew from that standpoint. And I guess that's part of what we're trying to share with everybody today, and why we did this episode is, to have fun and everything else, but just to understand how everybody's process and being introspective is a little bit different. And there's so much that we can learn from ourselves, and obviously others that we talk to too, and just keep an open mind about these things.
Yeah, beautifully said. It's funny, the theme of reflection is not just so you can hear other people talk about what they've experienced and how it's changed them. It's also to trigger that that thought, that introspection, within yourself. Really kind of take that look back and think about what it is you have to be proud of, and then of course looking ahead to what the next steps are, because that's the beauty of it. It's always an ongoing journey.
It absolutely is. And I think it would be silly if we didn't briefly comment in terms of our own reflection and outlook, at least how it relates to the podcast. And we have been doing some of that too, where we look back at what we have done, and while we have made some, I don't know, I say great accomplishments, but it's like, I think it's honestly really relative in terms of just growing the audience, covering certain topics and stuff, where we're really having this outlook of, kind of changing things up a bit. So are there any things you kind of want to tease in terms of what we're looking to do for the future?
Anything I want to tease, I would say, well, there are plenty of things that I think everybody should keep an eye out on. But I think perhaps the most interesting of those is that we are going to be taking a hiatus.
Yes, we are, because it's been busy times for both of us, honestly. But like, okay, well, I'll go into a little bit more. Honestly, we're teasing a lot here without saying much. I'll be quite frank, but we're taking a hiatus, as Mustafa said, because we have a lot in store, a lot planned, and if you think these past 2 episodes were an indication of that, well, then you're right, because we're making some big changes. Not too big, I guess. I don't know. You know what? You're just gonna have to wait and find out. So, like Mustafa said, we're taking this short hiatus. I'm not gonna give a definitive date, because I know how much we like definitive dates, but we don't. But we're really striving and focusing on sometime by the end of January or around there. So, but yeah, but the hiatus is a good thing. It's because we got a lot in the works and we're planning on some fun new things and just taking different approaches to stuff. Like everybody else's that we interviewed today is looking back on what they've done before and then applying what they learned and looking outward in the future. So lots of fun things going on. So everybody during this time, hope you enjoy the show and take this time to reflect and everything else. And if you miss us at all during this short period of time, feel free to go back to check out those other episodes that we called out to for all our guests today. I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. I think that about covers it, right, Mustafa? I mean, nothing else we got on our end other than to chill out,
No, just
relax.
enjoy some eggnog, spend time resting and relaxing, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time around.
Yeah, next year, right?
Exactly.
Next year.